Greetings, dear listeners. Hope you're all doing well, and welcome to Unboxing 1812 Volume 3. Recently, I purchased a collection of 72 books about the War of 1812. I don't know what the titles are, so I thought we could enjoy unboxing them together via the channel. What I'm going to do is, as I take each book out, I will hold it up, read off the title. If you think I should review any of these books on my channel, and I have been known to review books on my channel. At least I think about reviewing books on my channel. Sometimes I try. If you think I should review any of these books, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing to 1812 channel. Let's start a community of people interested in talking about the War of 1812, which is a very fascinating topic. And without further ado, here are the books. Here's a nice big fat one to start with. Death or Victory: The Battle of Quebec and the Birth of Empire by Dan Snow. This is probably about the 7 Years' War, or the French and Indian Wars, as they were known in North America. But that's useful background to what happened in 1812. Richardson's War of 1812, edited by Alexander Castleman. And of course, John Richardson was Canada's first novelist, and he was a combat veteran in the War of 1812. And this is a classic work. The War of 1812 by Gilbert Collins. Guidebook to the Historic Sites of the War of 1812 by Gilbert Collins. Pardon me, Gilbert, I didn't read the whole title there. And unfortunately, I'm about as far from the battle sites of the War of 1812 as you can get in North America, but someday. I grew up near all of them and paid no attention. A Nation on Trial: America in the War of 1812 by Patrick C.T. Wright. Now that ought to be an interesting read. Paradox of Fame: The Francis Key Scott Story. And if you don't know who Francis Key Scott was, he's the guy that wrote The Star-Spangled Banner, which came out of the War of 1812. Oh, say, can you see? Oh, I'll stop there. To preserve peace among the nations. Stop. Washington Burning, and it certainly did, by Les Stentiford, author of The Last Train to Paradise. Well, I don't know if Washington, D.C. is paradise. But let's see what it says. Here's the subtitle: How a Frenchman's Vision for Our Nation's Capital Survived Congress, the Founding Fathers, and the Invading British Army. So this should be an interesting read. The Voyage of the Beagle by Charles Darwin. Well, Charles Darwin was probably born in 1812, so there you go. I could use a little scientific reading. Masquerade: The Life and Times of Deborah Saunders, Continental Soldier. Aha. So Deborah must have been pretending to be a man in order to serve, and that has not been unknown in wars of the past. In Bitterness and in Tears: Jackson's Destruction of the Creeks and Seminoles by Sean Michael O'Brien. And the Creek War is something I've covered on the channel because it is sort of a related conflict to the War of 1812. And again, it relates to the whole issue of American expansionism. They tried to expand into Canada. They tried to expand out west where the First Nations and the Native Americans lived, and they wanted to also to expand into Florida, which was owned by Spain at that time, which was a British ally. While Washington burned, the battle for Fort Erie. Well, okay. I guess this is while Washington was burning. They were fighting at Fort Erie. So Fort Erie, a place I've been to many times, starting from when I was a kid. Went to the fort once when I was about 8. I need to go again. Now this, I thought this was a book. Oh yeah, okay. I have seen this book. I actually have it out from the library right now. For Honor's Sake, The War of 1812 and the Brokering of an Uneasy Peace by Mark, and I have no idea how to pronounce Mark's last name. Mark Zuehlke. But if you're interested in Canadian military history, Mark has written extensively on that topic, particularly about World War II, Canada during the Second World War, where Canada punched above its weight. I think maybe above its weight more than any other country, in my opinion. Okay, here we go again. We're talking about the Creek War. The other War of 1812, the Patriot War and the American Invasion of Spanish East Florida by James G. Cusack. And I've talked about maybe doing an information video about the Creek War on my channel, because it's a related conflict, but it's very complicated, and it's very complicated to explain in the short videos that I make. So this could come in very handy. 1805, Austerlitz. And this is very topical. Napoleon and the Destruction of the Third Coalition by Robert Goetz. And this is very timely because a Napoleon movie is coming out right now. So maybe Napoleon will become cool again. Hope so. Maybe the War of 1812 will become cool again. Napoleon in His Time by Jean Savant. Boy, I'm going to really be able to stock up on my Napoleonic reading. Hopefully I won't have any delusions of grandeur. Okay, Emperor of the North, Sir George Simpson, and the Remarkable Story of the Hudson's Bay Company by James Raffan. Says it's a national bestseller. Okay. James Raffan. All this stuff is really useful background. I don't know whether you guys are aware of this, but historians are starting to use the term 60 Years' War now to basically cover the period from the French and Indian Wars to the War of 1812. So it's all part of one big conflict. So anything you learn about that period is useful information. Battle for the Southern Frontier, the Creek War and the War of 1812. And this is by Mike Bunn and Clay Williams. It's got a picture of a man on the back. Looks like William Henry Harrison to me, but it is probably Andrew Jackson. And I have no idea who that is. I'll have to find out, and I'll let you know. John Burgoyne of Saratoga by James Lunt. Okay, this is about the American Revolution, the first one. Some people, particularly Americans, think the War of 1812 was the Second American Revolution or War of Independence. Half-Hearted Enemies, Nova Scotia, New England, and the War of 1812 by John Beaulieu. Many areas along the border, they sort of were at war, but they weren't. They were trading back and forth the whole time. It's very fascinating. And we get down to the bottom here, which my camera person is probably delighting, about to give a sigh of relief. Mapping the Frontier by George F.G. Stanley. And you can probably barely see that. And okay, I can barely read the print on the cover, so we'll just leave it at Mapping the Frontier. But again, all important history. And here we go to the final book, the one on the very bottom. Oh, this is right up. Oh, this is right up my alley. Naval Occurrences of the War of 1812 by William James. No relation. William James was a British historian. New introduction by Andrew Lambert. Let's just say that I was reading a little bit about James the other day, and he said he wrote to put down American boasters and British croakers. So William had definitely had an agenda. But this is a very famous work, actually, Naval Occurrences of the War of 1812. And I believe it was published just after the war, but don't quote me on that. So that is box number 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Let me know in the comments if you would like me to review any of these books, and eventually I will get around to doing it. And please consider subscribing to 1812 channel. I want to start a community of people just talking about the war and sharing information about the War of 1812. I'm not an expert, obviously, so if you're interested in doing that, please subscribe and support the channel. And when the barrage lifts, how am I going to get these back in the box? Oh, never mind. When the barrage lifts, cheers. As Jameses have to stick together.